Hello everyone, welcome back to today's episode of Spectre Spiel. Two girls.
And scary stories.
My name is Ria,
And my name is Ashita.
and today we are going to share a story about Pontianak. I would like to apologize beforehand if there is any mispronunciations. So let's get on with today's story. Today's story is about Pontianak. It's a ghost from Malaysian folklore. It's a ghost of a pregnant woman who died before she gave birth. It appears as an ugly woman with pale skin, long black hair, sharp nails, and a white dress. So I guess white dress is common for all the ghosts. Pontianak makes a sound like a crying baby. It is said that if the cries are soft, it means that she's close by, and if it is loud, it means that she's far away. So, when the Pontianak is near, the dogs howl, and you will smell a floral scent. And if the environment becomes unusually quiet and the dogs are whining, that means she is somewhere nearby. And you will also hear cries of infants or of feminine laughter. So that means it is too late by then. It is also said that the scent of the scent of drying laundry attracts Pontianak, and that is why many Malaysians don't leave laundry out overnight. So during the day, she hides in banyan trees or banana trees, but at night, she goes in search of human prey. She attacks men and drinks their blood. She can also disguise herself as a beautiful young woman walking alone at night. So just when you're least expecting it, that is the time when she will transform back into a Pontianak and plunge her sharp nails into the stomach and rip out the internal organs and devour them whole. It also sucks out the eyes of the victim. The only way to stop a Pontianak is to hammer a nail into the hole at the back of her neck. Yeah. So if someone does that, the ghost, Pontianak turns into a beautiful woman and she becomes a very good wife. But if the nail is removed, she will turn back again to her true forms. So I got this story online. It is a story about a couple named Mary and Roger. So Roger is a retiree and he loves to go to casino. He becomes like a little baby who gets really excited to play games, and then Mary has to literally drag him out of the casino. And this happens every time. And this time, when they had gone to the casino, it was no different. It was getting late and it was 7 p.m. when Mary started saying, like, Roger, let's go. It's time to go. But Roger would just beg, saying, 5 more minutes, please. So they had started at 7. Mary had started at 7. It was now 10 p.m. So at 10 p.m. they got out and Mary was like, finally. And then she shut the car's door and she was saying, my hands are freezing. So Roger leaned over and clasped them and he was like, let me warm them up. Obviously, he was in a good mood that he had won at the casino. So Mary was saying, silly old man, let's get going. But please drive slow. It is late and the road may be slippery. So she pretended to hit his head and smile. It was decades of marriage, but it still felt like love at first sight. They had to drive down a mountain to reach their destination. During daytime, it hardly takes 30 minutes to cross that road when the conditions are good. But during nighttime, as it's dark and the road is illuminated only by the moonlight and headlights, it takes longer time. And the mist also makes the curve and bends very risky because of skidding. So almost an hour goes by, and they notice that they had just crossed halfway mark. So Mary looked around and she could see nothing other than trees. Beyond that, mist and darkness of the night consumed everything. So she said, "Drive carefully, Roger." But then she noticed that the car was slowing down and it came to a speed as if it was now crawling. So she turned to Roger and she said, "Hey, careful doesn't mean you have to be like a snail." She looked over at Roger to give him a playful knock on his head, but instead noticed that something was off. He had a look of panic, and the car stopped by the side of the road. So Roger said, "This is strange. The headlights are working, but the wheels are not." He then muddled over the dashboard and it seemed like nothing was wrong. So he tried to restart the car, but it was still the same. So then Roger laughed and said, "At least the lights are working." Mary immediately shouted, "Don't jinx it." Just then the lights went out. So Mary could make sense. Like she felt a faint scent, uh, but she couldn't make sense of it. Like it was familiar to her, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. She tried to locate the source, and she looked at Roger, expecting him to be as bewildered as her, but he seemed oblivious of it. So she resisted the urge to ask because she recalled her late mom telling her not to bring up strange things that happens in strange situations. So Roger unbuckled his seatbelt and he said that, "I'm going over to check under the hood." Mary was skeptical about it and she was like, "No, no, no, don't go. Please stay with me." So he replied as, "It's okay. I will be right in the front. You can see me." And saying that, he opened the door and he left. Something strange was happening and it worried Mary, and she didn't feel good about it. Mary strained her eyes to scan the vicinity, keeping a watch for everything that may appear and drag Roger away.
Okay.
It was now 11:05 p.m. It was cold and dark, and Roger tried hard to direct the weak beam of his mobile phone's light. Nothing seemed to be wrong with the car, so he gave up and tried to call a toll truck. But it was weird because when he tried to call, there was no sound. So then he checked and found that the signal bar was empty. Letting out an enormous sigh, he got back into the car and he said that, "Darling, can I use your phone? Mine has no signal. I want to call the toll truck." But then Mary looked at her phone and found that even her signal bar was empty. She showed it to Roger and they were too tried to speak, or too tired and too worried. So, as Mary and Roger were waiting in the car, minutes felt like hours for them, and it was unusually quiet for a casino that is popular at all time of the day. It was like surely they thought that surely there will be people going or leaving. Then Roger looked at her and he said, I'm going to go and find some help. He said, I remember there is a petrol station minutes down the road. So Mary was again quite freaked out, and she said, no, you will not. Don't leave me alone here. And she was freaked out at the thought of being alone and of Roger going out in the dark alone. So she grabbed hold of his hand. So Roger consoled her. He said, don't worry, my dear, I'll be fine. Who wants to harm an old man? You just make sure you lock the doors and window. I'll be back soon, okay? So, saying that, he left, and his silhouette disappeared into the dark mist. Mary glanced at her watch. It was now 11:20. Some time passed by, and something startled Mary. She was feeling a little groggy, and she struggled to make sense of it. She was now a little sleepy too. The what startled her was a scratching sound, and it was coming from the roof of the car. It was like nails on a chalkboard. So Mary shook her head, and like she tried to dispel the grogginess and the excruciating noise, and she thought that she must have fallen asleep. So she checked the watch. It was now 12:05.
Oh.
Yeah. So she checked, but Roger was nowhere to be seen, and the scratching noise was getting intense, as if someone or something is getting impatient. So she thought maybe it is a monkey. Obviously, to no one she was speaking out, but she was like, maybe it's a monkey. Perhaps she felt that saying it out loud gave her thought some form of legitimacy. Like, it may be monkey.
Yeah.
So then there was a very loud thump on the roof, and Mary screamed, and she hit her head on the top of the car. Like, she jumped. Okay, by then the scratching sound had blended into a chaotic barrage of noises, like thumps and bumps and nails on the chalkboard, like scratching sound and everything. So she put her hands on her ears in a very futile attempt to seek silent reprieve, and she saw a beam of light coming into view. Mary saw a beam of light coming into view. Then two. So she then saw it was a car. A car was coming into view, flashing red and blue lights, which gave her instant relief. She was like, oh, a police patrol car. So she pressed her face on the window as if it will help to get the attention of the police. And she was like saying to herself, think, Mary, think. And she frantically looked around. There was no way that she was leaving the car, because she thought that a monkey is
yeah.
above the car. In the meantime, the thrashing and the scratching continued, as if trying to tear a hole in the roof to get to her. So the flashlight on the mobile phone, she thought about the flashlight on the mobile phone. And then she quickly turned it on and pointed it towards the approaching police car and waved it to gain the attention of them. And it seemed to work, as the police car slowed down, and as it was coming nearer, something seemed off to her. She heard the revving of an engine, and someone had floored the accelerator, like completely pushed the accelerator, and the police car sped past her. And she made eye contact with the officer, and Mary will never be able to forget that face. His eyes were wide and lips parted. There was no doubt that someone or something had terrified the police officer. The police car came to an abrupt stop, like brakes were screeched, and the officer stepped out of the car. He had drawn his gun with a defensive stance, And he seemed to be saying something, but Mary was not sure. Like he was 100 meters away, and the headlights were like flashing on her face. So he took a few steps forward. Maybe he realized that she cannot see her. So his figure started to fully form in front of Mary, and she could now see him. So she saw that the police officer was signaling her to get out of the car and come to him. Okay. And he seemed to be in a hurry and he was waving wildly. So Mary noticed that, and she noticed that something was weird. And his eyes were staring at the top of the car again and again. So Mary opened the door like very slowly, and she lowered her head, and she was very careful to not get in the way of that monkey which was on the rooftop. She started walking very slowly, like she got out very slowly out of the car, and then she started walking very slowly towards the police officer. And he was nodding as if he was urging her, like as if he was urging a toddler who were taking first baby steps, like he was doing like that, asking her to come forward towards him. And Mary noticed that the scratching and thumping continued. The and the police officer was screaming something to her, but it was inaudible. So Mary struggled to make sense of it, and as she continued to approach the police officer, maybe about 20 meters more were remaining, she heard what he was trying to say. So the officer was saying, "Don't look back. Just walk, ma'am. Don't look back." So his hands were also beckoning her to finish that last 20 meters stance. So the officer's instruction confused Mary, and she was like, maybe perhaps it's not a monkey but a tiger. Suddenly, she caught the faint scent of that flower again, and her curiosity was unbearable to her. She ultimately turned around and looked towards the car. And she saw something humanoid dressed in blood stained white, with hair so long that it touched its feet, and it was violently banging something on the roof of the car, swinging it widely and splattering red blobs of stuff all over the place. So Mary squinted her eyes to see what she was trashing, what is being trashed, and an instant feeling of nausea and petrification sweeps her off her feet. She was barely able to let out a howling scream, and she hit the ground, plunging into a coma. She saw the head of Roger with entrails splashing about.
I knew it.
So, how did you know it?
I just guessed it. I've heard too many stories from you, so I just guessed it.
Okay, so I know today's story was a little short and I'm sharing only one, but we'll come back with more pretty soon. I hope you guys enjoyed today's story.
And we hope to come with new episodes soon.
Till then, bye bye.
Bye!